from the Tooth and Nail release. That is the title track from the Dokken, their sophomore effort there that allowed them to kind of move on up into the big leagues of hard rock, heavy metal bands out of the LA area, Chris. And on the phone, we've got our friend and author, James Curle, who recently penned a book about Dokken, which became available yesterday. So welcome to the Classic Metal Show there, James.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Well,
are you guys surviving the China flu?
Well, we're here and we're talking to you, so obviously we're surviving.
Nice.
Well, you listen to the show pretty much on a weekly basis. You should know Chris and I are not going anywhere.
Absolutely. Neither am I.
All right. Well, very cool. Well, James, you contacted me a while back. You and I have met up a couple of times. We met up at NAMM for two years in a row here, and you had this idea. You wrote a book on Dio first.
I did. And
how long ago was it? That was like 4 years ago already, right?
Yeah, it was. It came out in what, 2018. Came out in 2018.
Okay, so you wrote a book on Dio. Do you have any background in writing, or are you just a guy who just decided you wanted to write a book?
Well, I wrote two boxing books, two boxing biographies, but I have no background. I just woke up one day and literally wanted to write a book, so I did, and it just went from there. It steamrolled from there.
All right, so when you began with writing the Dio book, what was your idea there that you wanted to write about Dio?
Well, after Ronnie had passed away, I waited years and years and years for a biography to come out, and it never did, so I just said, well, to hell with it, I'll do it myself. So I just started contacting people that played with him, band members like Vivian Campbell and Tracy G and Rowan Robertson, and I just started, basically voice recording all their stories and putting it into a book.
Very nice. Well, Chris obviously is another one of those guys who, kind of a self-starter and doesn't have any real, educational background in writing, but he took up the writing thing after his accidents. I believe that's the story, right, Chris?
That's it. Just started writing. At first it was therapy, but then I got good at it. So, and like
exactly.
James, I'm a few books in at this point, man.
Yeah, I'm. This was my fifth book, and I know you've done what, 5 or 6?
6. I've done 6
because I actually have a couple of years.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I guess I'll eventually have 2 of yours because I have the Dio book.
Yeah, and I'll definitely be sending over some Dokken copies.
Oh, cool.
Perfect.
Very cool. Well, talk about this Dokken book, man. I mean, it's not, it sounds in a way like you're sort of doing sort of what I did with when I wrote my Metallica book. You took something that you liked, but was not necessarily, there wasn't necessarily a big hole in the audience for it. It's not like there's been people clamoring forever for a Dokken book, but it outsider looking in, it looks like you just you were a fan and you decided to make this happen. Is that pretty close to how this came together?
Absolutely. I was a big fan ever since I was 15 years old, and I felt that there's no book on Dokken, and after I did the Ronnie book, I wanted to do another book. So I started looking around for bands, and there was no book on Dokken, and I'm a huge Dokken fan. And I just said, hell with it, I'll write a book on Dokken, even if there's not a huge clamoring for the book. So I got a hold of Neeley and started talking to him and asked him if he wanted to do the book forward. And I asked him if he could put me in touch with Don, and he did. And Jeff Pilson wrote the book forward for my Ronnie book. So I shot the idea over to Jeff, and he liked the idea of doing a Dokken book, so he agreed to help.
Perfect. Now, I understand that you also spoke with George Lynch, and he was real open about, answering questions and telling you stories. And then at the last minute, he said, don't use anything.
That's correct. He gave me like 3 really great interviews with stuff you will never find online. And then when I went to call him up, he said, I've decided not to help. And to be fair, he was nice, but he said, I just decided not to help with the book, and I want to do my own thing, and please don't use anything I gave you. and it was really a bummer. Really a bummer.
Wow. Well, another member of the band, Mick Brown, I put you in contact with him, and I thought Mick would be very cool about maybe at least giving you a couple of interviews, and he just flat out declined altogether.
Yeah, he right from the start. He said, I'm going to do my own book, and I don't want to give out any of my secrets. So, I respected it.
Well,
it is what it is.
Of course. I mean, as a fan of the band, I mean, you're obviously not out there to piss anybody off or make enemies in any way, shape, or form. But I was actually surprised at the the retort of saying, yeah, I don't want to help. I'm not interested in helping. And why George did a about face on you, that's another one I don't get. It's just like, wait a minute, you did 3 interviews with this guy, and then all of a sudden you just said, yeah, don't use any of that.
Yeah, I don't know what his reasoning was. Maybe he thought I was going to make a ton of money on the book or something like that, or maybe he just wanted to write his own book and not tell me everything, or maybe he talked to Mick and Mick said, hey, don't tell him anything, let's do our own thing, Yeah. I just really don't know. All I can do is speculate at this point.
Sure.
But, to be fair, they were both nice, and I respected their decisions, but hey, I got to talk to Don and Jeff a lot.
Now, how did you get a hold of Jeff to begin with and get him to write the foreword to the Dio book?
I actually sent him a message on his website, and he was more than happy to do multiple interviews. And then I just kind of befriended him. He was just such a nice guy. And I said, hey, do you want to write the book forward? And he said, absolutely, I would love to. So it just went from there, and then he agreed to help with the Dokken book.
Yeah, absolutely. So when, give us a little bit of a breakdown as to how this all, began for you as far as getting the Dokken book together. Obviously you contacted me to see if I could kind of give you a little, introduction to Don, and he was more than gracious to talk to you.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. After I got a hold of you, I got a hold of Don, and I told him, hey, I want to write this book, and I want to do multiple interviews, and at first he was like, oh, man, that's going to be a long story, And I said, well, we'll just do, 5 or 6 interviews and just take our time, do it whenever we can, and he did, and he gave me, information from his childhood all the way to modern day, and he was just really nice about it. And any question I had, I would send it through text, and he would answer the questions, and just really cool guy. And, like I've always said, one thing I learned about Don is he's a funny guy. He's very funny.
Well, both Chris and I know how funny Don can be.
Right. He's really funny. He's got some good stories.
Well, when you and I were at NAMM this year, and we were hanging out at the hotel prior to the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame induction ceremony, of course, Don was recovering from his surgery in November, his back surgery. And I was surprised he came down to the bar and stood there with us for like almost 4 hours. Oh,
yeah, 4 or 5 hours, and we all got pretty loaded. And I loved how Don said, short glass, double shot, and he was no ice or something like that. He had a very specific way of ordering his drink.
Yeah.
I got a kick out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Double shot, short glass, splash of Coke.
Exactly.
It's like some James Bond thing, He was great.
Sure. Well, not only did you interview Jeff and Don, but who else did you get to participate in this book? I know you reached out to some former early bandmates and people who were involved with Dokken in some way, shape, or form. So who else did you get to speak with?
Well, I had the pleasure of talking with John Levin 2 or 3 times, and he was really helpful, really nice guy. Reb Beach was another good one, because he had some really cool, groupie stories and stuff like that about the guys. And then I actually talked to Jack Russell from Great White, who's really good friends with Don, as you know. Just a really, really great guy and a really great interview. That guy has a million stories. And, there's several other guys. Michael Wagner, the producer, that he goes way back with Don all the way to the early 80s. And Tom Worman, who worked on the Tooth and Nail album. Just a bunch of great people, and they were all really nice, and they were more than willing to just tell all their stories.
Sure. Now, how did you go about sorting through and choosing what you would use?
Well, basically, to be honest, I used pretty much everything everybody gave me. There was just maybe a few tidbits that I didn't use. Yeah. Everything that everybody gave me was just really good, you know.
So how long is the book? Like 6,000 pages?
No, it's 245 pages.
All right.
So it's not super long, you know, because I don't want a book that's going to be 800 pages and people are going to go, damn, I'm never going to read this thing, you know. It's too thick. But yeah, 240 pages plus I found photos. A really good story is I found photos of George and Mick in the band called The Boys that they had before Dokken. These photos are not, you cannot find them online. Some guy found them in the 70s in a thrift store, and he sold them on eBay, and I bought them for like $12, and they're unbelievable. There's like 10 of them. 1976, with George and Mick in makeup in this band called The Boys. So I put all the photos in the book.
Nice.
Yeah. So fans are going to get a kick out of seeing that. I'm sure George and Mick will eventually get copies of the book one way or another, and they'll probably be going, how the hell did this guy find those pictures?
Right. Absolutely. Well, if you can find Mick, let us know where he is.
Yeah. Where he's in hiding, huh?
Nobody knows where he is. I mean, he left the band a year ago this month, I believe, and
right.
Even Don hasn't had any contact with him since.
Wow.
He just disconnected his phone. He closed down his websites, closed down his Facebook, basically scrubbed himself off the internet and gone.
Damn, it's I know he retired, but that's taken it a little far, right?
Yeah, I guess. Who knows? Who knows? So what else, so what do you want to tell us about this book aside from obviously who you interviewed and whatnot? What kind of a thing stood out for you as a labor of love? I mean, this basically, how long did this book take to write to begin with?
What was it? About a year and a half. It took a little longer than normal because I had a lot of projects around the house to do. But I think some of the stuff that stands out in the book is some of the great stories Don told me from his early days, you know, when he was dirt poor and he would have to buy cars and fix them up and sell them, him and Michael Wagner, and they didn't have a dime to their name, and they're eating top ramen and hot dogs every day, and their career is in the shitter, and they've got one chance to make it, so they get together and they write the album Tooth and Nail, and that's the one that really, really hit, you know. And I just love those early stories of, because Don and those guys, they really paid their dues, you know. Even, George Lynch, he was working as a liquor salesman. He had no money. He was living in the back of his car. These people paid their dues to get where they're at today, you know.
They actually worked and didn't expect the government handout?
No, they actually busted their asses. They paid their dues. They didn't just go on some YouTube and get signed and get a record deal. They played in clubs and bars and living in crappy cockroach. George was living in a place that had a bathroom with no shower or anything, just a toilet. It was unbelievable. These guys really paid their dues. Don really paid his dues to get where he's at. He paid his dues.
Right, absolutely. Well, you enlisted the help of Chris to work on the cover for this book, and you also got a hold of one of the most famous photographers out there to buy the photo for the front of the book. Tell us a story about that.
I did, and Mark's a nice guy, and he's
you're talking about Mark
very
Weiss.
Proud of his. Yeah, Mark Weiss. He's very proud of his photos though, because that thing cost me $1,000. $1,000 for that photo. And Chris did a wonderful job on the cover. Everybody loves the cover.
Thanks.
Everybody I sent a picture to, they just love it. They're like, oh, that looks badass, love it. So Chris, thank you very much.
Sure. No problem. Thanks for paying me.
Yeah. Hey. And I've got some other projects I'm working on, so I'm going to need some more book covers. I got a book I'm doing about all the great guitar players from the 80s. So far, I have 15 interviews I've done with just the guitar players from the 1980s that hit big in the 80s, and the list is going to be incredible. What's that?
Did you get CC DeVille?
Not yet, but I am working on him. I am working on getting him, and there's a few other guys I have. I'm working to get.
I thought you said this book was about great guitar players from the 80s.
Well, he was a flashy. I'm not saying he's a great guitar player, but the great guitar players from the 80s. So they're gonna have a little of everybody in there.
CC DeVille, I wouldn't let him paint the cover. Jesus.
No shit. Yeah, no, I actually am trying to get a hold of him and a few other guys, but the list I have already is incredible. So, and I've done about 15 interviews.
Well, speaking of the cover, of course you had to buy the photo from Mark Weiss, but Don did you a big solid on the cover, right?
Yes, he did. He let me use the official Dokken logo, which I was surprised because I was fully prepared for him to say no, it's a copyrighted thing and stuff. But he was very nice and let me use that, and I can't thank him enough. So I'm going to send him like 20 copies of the book. and a big shout out to you for writing the book forward. I love the book forward. Great story about how you met Don and how you were a truck driver and all that. Of course, I read the story a couple times and I loved it. I think it's a pretty decent book.
Well, good. I'm looking forward to reading it. I'm interested to see if there's some tidbits in there that I don't even know. And, I guess if you're a Dokken fan, you might want to go get it. So how can people get it there, James?
Well, you can get it on Amazon.com. That's basically probably the easiest way to do it. They can send me, my email address, curle88@hotmail.com.
You still got a Hotmail. You got a Hotmail address, James.
Yeah, everybody says that's like old and out of date, but I'm not much of a computer guy, and I know zero about social media, so I got a Hotmail account 20 years ago, and that's just all I've ever had. I'm kind of a dummy when it comes to that stuff.
So you don't even have like any kind of a social media page or a Twitter or anything to advertise your books?
No. All I do is go on Facebook and go on all the hair metal sites I can find and just put a picture of the Dokken book on there and say, available at Amazon.
All right. Well, at least you're out there doing some social media promoting, right?
Yeah. That's really all I know how to do, I'm kind of...
Build a business page for the Facebook, for fuck's sake. It'll take you 10 minutes.
Build a business page. Good idea. Okay, I'll look into that.
If you send Chris $250, he'll build that page for you.
I'll tell you what, James. Honestly, you email me and remind me because I won't remember past 5 minutes from now. But you remind me tomorrow, and I'll direct some traffic for you and give you the graphics that you need for a business page. It'll take you like 2 minutes to build.
And will that will generate views? People will see it?
Well, they'll see James Curle book, and then you just lead people to it, and then they can buy the book right from it.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, we'll have to talk.
Yeah, that's
definitely.
fine.
Now, is your Dio book still available?
It is. It's on Amazon as well, or they can send me a message to curle88@hotmail.com. But yeah, that book's available, and I post it on Facebook every once in a while. And that was another great fun book to write. Really had a lot of fun doing that one.
Sure. So yeah, if you get that business page, like Chris says, you can put your books up there, and people can be aware of your other projects outside of the Dokken book, and establish yourself.
Yeah, I guess I have to.
Well,
especially with some more projects coming.
Well, of course, you're on the biggest show that you're going to get an interview on tonight too, as well. So.
Oh, absolutely. Everything else pales in comparison to the classic metal show.
Absolutely. All right, James, anything else?
No, I think that's good. My manager's calling. I know my manager just got home, so she'll be calling. So I just want to, say I really appreciate you guys having me on, and sometime I'd like to just call in, and just do the whole bullshit thing. That'd be cool.
You want to be third mic? Is that what you're telling me, James?
Yeah, that'd be great, man. We can talk all about Trump and the coronavirus and Jericho Green, who I love to listen to, and just don't call it the China flu.
I'll tell you what, James, if you really want to have that conversation, you can be second mic, and I'll just take a week off.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, we could talk about all kinds of crazy stuff.
Sure. All right, James, throw that plug out there again and let people know what the name of the book is, where they can find it, all that good shit.
All right, Dokken, Into the Fire. It's available on most online bookstores and resources, Barnes & Noble and Amazon, or at Curle88 at hotmail.com. It's available on all those sources. You can get it at Walmart, Barnes & Noble's, any place that sells books online. But, yeah, Amazon's probably the easiest one.
All right, perfect. And it is available now, so you can get it by probably middle of next week, or this coming week, rather.
Yeah, as long as the virus isn't slowing everything down.
Exactly.
People have been ordering copies on Amazon already, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, James, well, appreciate you taking a few minutes, letting people know that the new Dokken book is available. You can go get it, go order it today, throw James a few dollars, and, enjoy the book. So, James, I'll let you pick a Dokken tune to take us out.
Oh, let me hear when Heaven Comes Down.
Okay. Any particular reason?
That was the very first Dokken song I ever heard in my life when I was 15 years old.
Okay.
That and Into the Fire.
Okay. So you like my my story about when heaven comes down in my forward too, huh?
Yes.
Hey, don't be giving away the secrets of the book, Neeley. Make people buy it.
Yeah, pal.
Yeah, my whole story's in there too about the first day I heard Dokken. It is almost like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
But yeah, play that one for the fans. That's good.
All right. Well, go pick up the new Dokken book, Into the Fire, and well, here it is. This comes from the Tooth and Nail release, and this is one of my favorite tracks as well. As this is When Heaven Comes Down, exclusively here. Where, James?
On the Classic Metal Show.